We've been going through a series where we talked about putting faith into practice, and we heard from a number of people in our community what that could look like. We have thanks to Lois that she could step in for me last week. I was in California recording some lectures, some online courses for our denomination, so that was a good time, and thank you, Lois, for stepping in. But as we've been thinking about what it means to put faith into practice, it's occurred to me, and it occurred to me in these lectures, that there's a fundamental confusion that we get between a belief system, and faith. We sang, "Great is thy faithfulness," and it's a song about all the things that God has done for us. It wasn't a song about great is our belief about who you are, for example. It wasn't something like that. But at the same time, we have our Apostles' Creed, which is about what is it that you believe. And we say all these kind of statements that today might be thought of, well, that's an opinion. You have the opinion that Jesus was born of the Virgin Mary and suffered under Pontius Pilate. So what do we do with this belief and faith? Well, we're going to look at the book of John, chapter 14. And around this is when Jesus is telling his disciples that he was about to leave them. He was going to have to go and suffer and die. But he promised that he wouldn't leave them alone. So this is a chapter about how Jesus is going to comfort his disciples. And as I read, listen for 3 different kinds of comfort that he promises to them. He promises to prepare a place for his disciples and for us, that we get to that place through him. Secondly, he gives us comfort that his promises, Jesus' promises, are true because of who he is in relation to the Father and the works that he did to prove himself. The promises he makes that he's going to prepare a place for us, those are true because of who he is in relation to the Father. And the third comfort, he says, is that we will do the same kind of works that Jesus himself did. So let's read from John 14, verses 1 to 17. Jesus says, "Let not your hearts be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me." I should say believe there could be translated trust. And I think that's probably a better way to understand it. Trust in God, trust also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and take you to myself, that where I am, you may be also. And you know the way to where I am going. Thomas said to him, "Lord, we do not know where you are going. How can we know the way?" Jesus said to him, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you had known me, you would have known my Father also. From now on, you do know him and have seen him." Philip said to him, "Lord, show us the Father, and it is enough for us." Jesus said to him, "Have I been with you so long, and you still do not know me, Philip? Whoever has seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, 'Show us the Father'? Do you not believe that I am in the Father, and the Father is in me? The words that I say to you I do not speak on my own authority, but the Father who dwells in me does his works. Believe me, trust me, that I am in the Father, and the Father is in me, or else trust on account of the works themselves. Truly, truly, I say to you, whoever trusts in me will also do the works that I do, and greater works than these he will do, because I am going to the Father. Whatever you ask in my name, this I will do, that the Father may be glorified in the Son. If you ask me anything, I will do it. If you love me, you will keep my commandments, And I will ask the Father, and he will give you another helper to be with you forever, even the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive, because it neither sees him or knows him. You know him, for he dwells with you and will be with you. So Jesus, we normally know of this passage, especially in John 14:6, as sort of one of these proof texts to show Jesus gives us all the truth, because he says, I am the truth. So if you want to know that there's one way to get to heaven and to the right way to look at the world, you have to believe in Jesus. See, belief is a set of viewpoints that we hold, right? In the Apostles' Creed, we had a number of statements that we said, I believe this, I believe that, I believe this, I believe that. It's a set of viewpoints that we might call today opinions. In our current state of the world, Christianity, like all religions, is an opinion, legally at least. We have the right to hold whatever opinions we want to. That's a fundamental human right, we like to think. And so we like to think that truth is what happens when our opinions are confirmed by evidence, right? This is how scientists think. You make up a hypothesis, you say, now, I think that this and this explains the circumstances we're seeing, this is what's causing that to happen, and then you devise a test to figure it out. Now let's see whether the sky is blue because of the refraction of light. And so you can test it in a small way, or however you want to go about that. And then when you do say, wow, look, the sky is blue because the refraction of light, it's true, it's proven, that is a fact. No one can deny it. My belief in it is not an opinion now, it's solid truth. That's the way we look at the world. And so when we come to the big questions that we're often faced with, we get troubled with being religious people. Questions like, does God exist? A question that, no matter how far science ever advances, could never be put into a laboratory situation. So it always remains an opinion, we think, a hypothesis. And that's how we like to live our lives. We don't necessarily really like it. If you think about living based on a hypothesis, what does that look like? It means constantly being in doubt, right? You could say, well, maybe it's true, and I'll look for evidence here, and I'll look for evidence there. Maybe it's true if I could just find the right evidence to prove that it's real. Does God exist? But you'll notice that's not the kind of question Jesus' disciples were asking in this story. And they never really asked that question. Of course, in their day, that was not really on anybody's mind. Pretty much everybody believed in a lot of gods, or one, if you were a Jew. But Jesus is saying that he's not about a way to go to find the truth. You notice that he doesn't say, if you want to know the truth, you have to know me, and you have to know the Father. He's not the road to enlightenment or the road to truth. Look at what he says. He says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. So what he's saying is the goal that we have in mind isn't truth, right? Truth is the way we get to the goal, which is God himself. And Jesus is the way to that place. So he's not talking about here's a fact or here's a hypothesis that you can confirm. And that's why I said we need to look at this word belief and think about it in a different way. We need to think about it as trust. He says, trust in me. Not have this in your mind that this belief, this opinion, it's not an opinion about some hypothesis, right? This is a different kind of knowledge. When you've known somebody for 50 years, maybe you've been married for 30 of those 50 years, you kind of know what that person's going to do. I've only been married for 2 years, and we still are able to predict each other's behavior quite frequently, or what somebody's going to say. That's a skill that you develop being in a relationship. And we call that trust, right? You know what someone's going to do. You know that they have the best in mind for you. And of course, when that trust is broken, things fall apart. The whole world falls apart when the people we love are no longer trustworthy or betray us. What Jesus is really getting at in this passage is not the question, oh, does God exist? Or this belief system you sign on to, is it the truth? Could you confirm this by hypothesis? Should we go out and hold debates with all of the atheists and say, I can prove to you that God exists? No, he's saying, trust in me. That's a very different thing. It's not about factuality, it's about a relationship. And we've been talking about what does it mean to put faith into practice. And this is exactly what Jesus is talking about. Faith isn't just a belief system, it's trust in someone. And in order to put our faith in God into practice, we have to trust him. And so we can do the works that Jesus does, which he promises to us. Not because we're out setting out to prove this belief system, but because we're in a relationship with Jesus. And we get to do the works that he did. I mean, what are the works that Jesus is talking about? We like to think he would mean the miracles, that we could go out and do all these things to prove that God exists by raising the dead or walking on water or feeding 5,000 people with 1 loaf of bread or 5 loaves of bread. But that's not, I don't think, what he's talking about. Because he goes on and he says, if you love me, if you trust me, if you really love me, you will keep my commandments. Now that's not a command saying you have to keep my commandments or I'm going to be mad at you. He's saying if you love me and trust me, this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to naturally flow out of your life. You will keep my commandments. And what are Jesus' commandments? Love God, love your neighbors, love your enemies as you love yourselves. It's pretty simple in a sense. If we know Jesus and we love him, then our faith gets put into practice naturally as the fruit of that relationship. Because if we understand his love, how could we not love one another in the same way? Now, I'll confess that sometimes I struggle with doubts about Christianity. It's very hard in our own day and age to believe in the Apostles' Creed, for example, when everyone else around us thinks that as a system of belief, it's completely outdated. I mean, who believes that God created the heavens and the earth, or who believes that someone could be born of a virgin? Miracles don't happen. We all know that because you can't put them in a laboratory and prove them, right? They don't fit the scientific method. Like Thomas, sometimes I'm not sure where Jesus is or where he went to or when he's coming back. But see, the proof of Christianity isn't in this belief system, in philosophy. It's not in science, and it's not even in morality. It's not even in being good citizens who can follow the 10 Commandments well. Remember the story of the rich young man who did keep the commandments perfectly, but he didn't want to follow Jesus because he didn't love him and he didn't trust him. He trusted himself and wanted God to glorify him for his good morality. See, the proof of Christianity is in the works that Jesus did and the kind of love that he shows to us. A love that never gives up. A love that no matter how often we betray him, he forgives us and brings us back. That is the kind of love that to me is the demonstration of who Jesus is. That whenever I'm faced with doubt, I keep coming back to the love of God shown in Jesus. Not to the miracles, not to those other things that we might think. And I do believe in them. That's not saying I don't believe in them, but to me that's not what convinces me. Because lots of people have stories of miracles, but nobody else has a story of this kind of love. A love that reaches out to the most bitter of enemies, and when he's being murdered on the cross, looking out at his own murderers, not shouting down curses on them, or vowing revenge, or commanding his disciples to rise up and get justice. Now, this is a guy who's being murdered and loves his murderers while they're killing him. And he asks God to forgive them because they don't understand what they're doing. Nobody else has that story. And to me, that is the greatest demonstration of who God is and why to me it's not about belief. It's not about agreeing with these ideas. Those ideas are important, but the trust is there at the beginning. So, if we trust Jesus, we will keep his commandments. We must move from a system of belief to understand God's faithfulness. Do you trust Jesus? Or do you have just a belief system about him? Do you hold opinions about Christianity? Or do you want to follow Jesus and engage in the same kind of love that he showed? Do you want to follow Jesus, or does he support the way that you look at the world? Is he there to bolster your belief system? Is Jesus the way to truth, or is he the way to be reconciled with the Father? Today I'd like to challenge you to think about that, to challenge you to follow Jesus, to choose this day to serve him personally. And the way we do that is quite simple, although it's not always easy. It means loving God and loving our neighbors.